Alright, welcome back to our series on extracting data from Jira using Java and the REST APIs. At this point, we have done our login request and we've got our response back that contains our JSESSIONID. So in this episode, we'll be parsing that out so we can use it to authenticate in future requests. Let's go up to the top here and we will import JSON Simple. That's org.json.simple. Now we have this in our class path, and because this is a Mac that I'm developing on, I put it in library Java extensions. But on your computer, just as long as you have the jar file copied into one of your class path folders, that will be fine. And you can get it from the Maven repository. It's JSON Simple. Obviously here as I'm typing, you can see that. JSON Simple, we're going to want to use the parser. So we'll get all the parser stuff too. And save that away. Now we're ready to start using it. What we have here, we have our parse JSESSIONID function, and it's going to need some input. In fact, what it needs is just our login response. So let's go down to the function itself. So that's sending it off, and we need to receive it as well. The parse JSESSIONID string, I'll just call it input. So that's our input. Now let's take a quick peek back. Because we're getting debug output out of each function that we call, we did get our login response back, and we can see it here. And it looks like to parse this, we will need to go through the session object to the value object and then get the value of the value object. That's neat. So let's do it. We'll go down to our function here and we'll create a try catch block. Try catch exception ex, and the error handling that we're using, we're having each function print out its own error message and then change its output to the string error in all caps. This is parse JSESSIONID, and it's not our login response anymore. This time it'll be our JSESSIONID as the output. We will change that to JSESSIONID. So now we have error handling set up. We should have our debug output as well. Let's toss that in. We'll copy and paste that from last function, and this is JSESSIONID and JSESSIONID. And you know what? I'm just going to add line breaks there, just in front of each of them. Now we've got debug output too. It is pretty good. The parser is pretty simple. First, we instantiate a parser to do the work for us. So let's do that. We'll call it, it's a JSON parser object, and we'll call it parser, and it's going to equal a new JSON parser. Now we have a parser, let's use it. It's going to output objects. So we'll take an object and we will load it up with parser doing a parse on our input string which we received in. Now that's neat as an object, but what we really want is a JSON object, because we got to step through those parts. What is it? Session and then value. So we want to as a JSON object. So we'll turn it into a JSON object that we'll name JSON object, because I'm not feeling very creative today. JSON object. Basically, we're just casting object as a JSON object. And then we need to extract the session and then the value. So the session, when that comes back, we want to get this whatever's inside session, we want to get that as another JSON object. JSON object, and we'll call this session JSON object. That'll be good enough. It will be a JSON object. We'll need to cast it to that, and we'll get it from our previous JSON object. We're just going to get session. And then we're going to, from within this session object, we'll parse out the value of value from that. Now we know it's going to be a string at the end of the day, so we'll just call it a string. Value equal, and we'll cast it as a string, our session JSON object dot get value. And really, we could just call that our JSESSIONID. In fact, let's do that. JSESSIONID. I've already declared it. So that was fairly painless. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code. Let's see if it works. So we'll go back here and Java automate. Oh, it compiled the first time. And there we have it. Look at that. Our login response, debug output, and then our JSession ID. Now does it 3D69, 3D69, and what about the end? Well, 145 anyway. 145. That's great. Okay. We used our debug output, and that was really the goal for our episode. In the next session, we will use this JSession ID to authenticate and extract data from another API in Jira. Thanks very much, and I'll see you soon.